Well, yeah, just say you're Tyler. You're new to NASCAR.
God damn it.
We're doing good. I think we can do this.
Probably should have given ourselves a little bit more time, yeah.
Could just take another shot of whiskey.
Hello, welcome to the first ever Two Tyler Pitstop. This is where we're talking about racing news and the latest of what's going on in NASCAR. As it is the first episode, I figure we can go into backgrounds of around racing, and I really don't have much other than watching my first ever race, Martinsville, and seeing the Ross Chastain video game move, and been a fan ever since after watching that playoffs.
So my background in the world of racing pretty much goes back to when I was a little kid. I started off, I swear I came out of the womb with toy little die-cast cars, and I always had this love and enthusiasm for racing and, you know, the paint schemes of cars and stuff like that. My dad used to race at a local track, Beach Ridge Motor Speedway, and I grew up watching him, and I just loved watching the races, going home, and just reenacting everything I saw with my little die-cast cars. Did that for undeniably a long time, probably too long of my life, but it was something that I really loved and enjoyed. The first NASCAR instance that I can remember, it was the 2003 Daytona 500, and it was a crazy race. It was actually a rain-shortened race, which by today's standards I would hate. I would be like, that sucks. But for my first time ever remembering anything, it was crazy. There was a lot of accidents. One in particular that's always stuck with me is Ryan Newman, who no longer races in NASCAR, but he had a huge crash late in the race and flipped over through the infield several times. And just the visual of seeing him flip through that infield, I was in love. I was I could watch this every week, probably reenacted it on my toy cars a million times, and would try to play video games to flip over and stuff like that. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. In terms of how the actual race went, like I said, it was a rain-shortened race. They only got 110 laps or so out of a 200-lap race, and Michael Waltrip ended up winning that. And you probably don't even know Michael Waltrip because he's really not that well known. I mean, he's a sports analyst, so he goes down and talks to all the drivers. But in terms of racing, he really didn't. I don't want to down talk him, but he didn't do too much other than winning at Daytona. He won the 500 twice and then won another race at Daytona, and I don't think he won anything else other than that. So the race itself wasn't the best, but I just fell in love. I was hooked for life.
So speaking of Daytona, what did you think of the race a few nights ago?
So watching it in the moment, from what I've seen online and what people's instant reactions were, I almost think I'm against the grain a little bit, where I thought the racing was great. It was side by side the entire race. I mean, you had no idea who was gonna be in the lead, right, one lap to the next lap. I mean, yeah, it was not three wide. There wasn't a bunch of wrecks early on, but I thought it was still great racing. I saw a stat where there was 52 different lead changes.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And that's crazy. That's the second most in Daytona 500 history. And this was in tandem racing, which is something that used to happen back in the day, where you would hook up with just two or three drivers, and you could take off, so they'd have 10 different groups of 2 or 3 drivers constantly throughout the race passing each other. But this was full group side-by-side racing, and we still managed to get 52 different lead changes, and it was between 21 different drivers. I thought that was a crazy stat, and it just shows how exciting the race really was, I think, even though a lot of people thought maybe it wasn't as exciting because there wasn't as many three-wide action-packed wrecks early on. Or
right.
Whatever.
And not knowing much about the culture of NASCAR, and very limited even on the drivers. It seemed like everybody had their runs throughout the entirety of the race. You saw even in the first stage, even though they were so far back, Ty Gibbs and Chastain had the 2 fastest laps.
Right.
And everything going on towards the end of stage 2 with Chastain coming through and getting his points, his season points for the stage. It seemed like you really just didn't know who was going to win. And there was still like the fill of wrecks, like when Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott went down after being 2 cars that were in the top 15, 20 for the majority of the race. And would you say it was just kind of unfortunate where Kevin Harvick backed it or got a little bit of his tail?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really hard with play racing because everything, you can watch it under a microscope on a slow motion replay constantly and you can criticize everyone, but they're going 190 miles an hour. I mean, when they catch up to someone, it's very hard to let off. And you're not really just letting off the gas all the way or hitting the brakes, because you do that, you're going to get run over. So I think in Kevin Harvick's position, which if I remember right, he kind of just got into the back of someone and hit them wrong. It's so hard because it's a fraction of a second where you're just, one moment you have that distance between you, and in your car you don't see everything up ahead, 3 cars, 4 cars ahead.
Right.
You don't know what's going on up there, so you're kind of just following a line, and the next thing you know, it's like if you were, in rush hour traffic and someone just hit their brakes all of a sudden, but you don't see a brake light.
Yeah,
you have no idea what's going on.
Imagine being in rush hour on the highway going 190.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's easy to watch from a replay standpoint and like watching it from, up in the blimp's camera or something like that. But no, when you're in the car, it's not that easy. And you have a fraction of a second to make a decision, and your body tells you not to let off.
Right.
And really give that up. As for, Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick, I mean, it's just tough. I mean,
it just happens. Yeah,
it's Daytona. Unfortunately, it's kind of just a roulette wheel if you're going to survive or not.
At least they have a long season to hopefully battle back for some points. That's one thing that really got me into the sport in general, especially watching playoffs, where Martinsville, too, is just such an intricate sport where it's so based off of instinct and knowing just how your car works and so many little things to think about. And I think you were telling me, was it Pastrana that was saying, like, even during, like, the qualifying races, he doesn't see anything. He looks at, like, the Sunoco signs just to know when it's time to turn.
Yeah, it's crazy. And honestly, like, I had always wondered what these drivers are thinking and looking at. I've been lucky enough to go around Daytona, but it was in a passenger seat, just us basically.
Right.
So I could see everything. But like being a driver and not being able to see all that stuff in front of you, like Travis Pastrana, like I thought he gave good insight of what he was doing. He was like, the Sunoco signs right before the corner. He said he couldn't even see the track, but every time he saw that sign, he knew the corner was coming and to prepare for it. So I thought that was it was a really good insight. It's not something that you always get to see.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he's very much like coming from still a racing background, but like with dirt races and very different type of tracks. Where you still have to probably feel out for it, but to hear how different it was for him was super interesting.
So from your standpoint, like, because obviously you've only seen a handful of races, so you saw Martinsville, Phoenix, and now Daytona. Like, these are your first 3 races, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, I think I've watched. Yeah, was it just those 3 last races for the playoffs?
Yeah, I think it was just those 2 last races, and then you watched this one.
Yeah.
So comparing it to like what you've seen before versus now a new season, the Great American Race, the Daytona 500, did you think it was a good race? Or how did you feel about it watching it?
It's interesting. I think I kind of like the smaller tracks more just because of how much you've already described about like how different draft racing is rather than like maybe those intricate little tracks. Like I watched the Clash of the Coliseum, even though it was just a money race.
Oh, yes, yeah.
But like even like seeing how small that track is, even though it's the size of a football field, is pretty insane. So it's very interesting contrast where you go from one of those types of tracks to how long is Daytona? 2 miles?
Yeah, about 2 mile track, 2.5 miles.
They literally have a lake in the middle of the track.
I know, it's crazy. Back in the old days, and I don't think it's happened in a long time, people used to go like fishing in that lake or like boating in the lake during the 500. You'd like see people out there. It's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's it's crazy just how intricate, and like a lot of the sport that I mainly watched a lot was like football, and there's just so many moving parts no matter like what position you're playing, and every one of those parts of the team has to work for you to have a winning football team. And it's kind of the same with like your car, your crew, your spotter even. He has a huge job just telling the driver what's around him.
It's definitely a lot that goes into it. I mean, even the pit stops, everything involved. One thing goes wrong. You could lose a race or a championship by something you don't even do wrong. Like, not so much this year, but Denny Hamlin last year, I know he had a lot of issues just in pit road where it was like he would do everything right. Which, I don't want to give him too much props, but he would do everything right and then have a bad pit stop and lose a race. And it was like, he's one of the best drivers that are out there right now, and he's still like struggled last year with doing well, and a lot of it was stuff that wasn't his fault.
Yeah, even this race, he was up there in top like 5-10 for most of the race, but I'm looking at my notes, he's not even in the top 10 at finishes. And when I do look down this list, I do see a lot of the drivers that were that went deep into the playoffs. So it's an interesting start where you have Logano, Bell, Blaney, and Chastain all in the top 10. But then you have all how it finished with Stenhouse coming in. I forgot Kyle Busch. He didn't even finish in the top 10. Yeah. After almost winning it before the Suarez spin out. Yeah. So it's interesting how many things can happen, and how different the results can be because of that.
Yeah. Daytona will do that. It's a weird time of the year. I mean, you'll get some drivers that you wouldn't see up front battling for the top 5, top 10 at the end of the race. Like Riley Herbst, he finished 10th, and he was the number 15 Sonny D car. He literally spun out in the race going to pit road under green. He had an awful race from what I would say, like, you would think is like a good standard of if you've done good or not. And he still got 10th. And, that's a lot of money for a team like whatever team he's driving for. It's crazy. And you just get all these drivers that really you'll never see them up front, but on these plate races, anybody can do well.
Yeah, and it seemed like I forgot what I was going to say, but especially with all the crashing that was happening in the back half of that race, people they had to take their chance when they could. And like I was saying before, where no matter who you were, even like Mike McDowell before he had that big crash out, he went up like 25 the spots, like in the middle of like stage 2 or in the early stage 3. It's interesting, yeah. So what do you think of the ending with the first caution to create the first overtime?
Right.
What was it? Was that Suarez?
I think, yes. So, it was Daniel Suarez, who, by the way, finished 7th place.
Still finished 7th, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to tell me someone spins out with, 2-3 to go, and then they come back up and finish 7th place, I don't want to promote that, but it's awesome, and I have a little bit of bias because I like Trackhouse, but it's definitely crazy to see that he still finished 7th, but that caution in general, I mean, is very, I don't know if there should have been a caution at first or what happened, because he spun out by himself. It kind of looked like he was going to be able to keep going at first.
And that happened earlier in the race where someone spun out, but they were already in pit road, so the green kept.
They kept it going. That was Riley Herbst, yeah. So
that was the Herbst.
It's very similar things, but two different responses by NASCAR, I think.
And how are you feeling if you're Kyle Busch after that?
I mean, he actually said it himself. He's like, if this was the 1998 Daytona 500, I would have won. Because the way that it worked back in 1998 is, from what I understand, is the caution laps counted and you didn't get extra overtime.
Right.
So if you got the caution with 2 to go and it takes 2 laps to have caution laps, like, you just win the race.
Yeah.
I think in his mind, like, it just sucks that, it's going to happen no matter what with Kyle Busch. Like, this is in the 19th try I think he's had to win the race.
Right, yeah.
And he's a very good driver, one of the best, and he still can't get it done. So I think he goes into it almost thinking, how am I going to lose it this time? And he's figured out just about every time how he's going to do it. He actually mentioned after the race, he's like, it's more of what lap am I going to end up going to the care center, which is when you crashing at the wall, you go to the care center every race. So for him, that's kind of how he sees it. I mean, it's a crappy situation for Kyle, but he'll get over it. He'll come back.
Yeah, and then how do you see where do you think they hit the caution button at the right time? Because I know, from what I know, you're not the hugest Logano fan, but he was leading up until just about when they hit it, and that's right about when Stenhouse, and that could have just been very lucky timing.
Right.
But it's hard if you're Logano to accept that. Yeah.
So I don't think there's a conspiracy. I don't think by any means NASCAR holds a button, because why would they want Ricky Stenhouse to win as opposed to Joey Logano? Logano won the championship last year. I feel like that's like more of a story for NASCAR. I think, man, I hate that it comes down to a button push. I mean, I almost wish they could race to the line. I think, unfortunately, there's been too many circumstances in the past, because they used to do that where you would race to the line.
Would it be like continuous?
Yeah, okay, but if somebody gets hurt and they're flipping over in the backstretch, they don't want to have to wait to bring a care car out there to go pick them up because they're still racing to the line. Or if the crash happened on the front stretch and they still have that last lap, like, what are they going to do? You can't let them come all the way back around into a pile of mayhem. So they really have to press the button, and it's just kind of luck of the draw. I mean, I've seen a lot of fortune go Joey Logano's way, unfortunately. And then, this one went against him. I was happy in the moment to see Stenhouse get it, even though I'm not a huge Stenhouse fan either. I think he wrecks a lot of people at these types of races by being over-aggressive. But, he did a good job. He's always been consistently good at these types of tracks. So I think he deserved the win, even with, if it's controversial, when they press the button.
Right.
I mean, Xfinity had the same problem where they had three cars that could have won that, depending on when they pressed. Depending on when they press the button. A second before or a second later, you have 3 different winners.
Exactly.
So it's random. It's not chosen by NASCAR, which is, I guess that's all you really have to be thankful for. I mean, you could have it be like WWE, where they want the storyline and they choose it's definitely some NASCAR races where I feel they do that, but no, I don't think there was any issues this time around.
So in that case, just as the rule in general, because it's a fairly new rule, right? Where it's the button push?
No, I think it's always been the button. So what they're saying by the button push is it's not when those lights come on. It's if you're watching an NFL game or an NHL game, sometimes it's the moment the ref is trying to call for something is the moment that play is dead.
Right.
So if in NHL, a puck is about to go across the line, but the ref thinks they're covering it, and they blow the whistle right before the puck comes across the line, it's a dead puck.
Yeah.
In football, there's a lot of stuff where it's like the ref tries to stop the play. I think, what was it, the NFC championship game where like the Bengals and Kansas City were going at it, and the ref ran in to stop the play, but the play got off. The play was dead. I mean, it just is what it is. The moment that button is pressed in NASCAR is the moment it stops. It's not the delay from the button to the light. It's not the delay from the button to people saying there's a caution. I think they got it right. They're following other sports. If you could get the light and the button more in line, maybe that's better. But.
I guess more of my interest is is the time of the button push, could that ever be contested, like say a challenge or something, or is that is that very much just judgment?
Oh, NASCAR doesn't give you a chance to challenge anything. It's a judgment call. 100%, and NASCAR is stuck in their ways that everything is a judgment call, and they are wrong sometimes, and it's very obvious, but...
It's the same thing you see in baseball, right?
Yeah.
Like the ump can be off the plate the entire time, but that's just how it is with refereeing, yeah.
Well, NASCAR, they're inconsistently consistent. It's always a judgment call, and it's never going to match the next time they call it. But it just is what it is, and you kind of got to go with that.
So, on top of that, who are you looking at for your top picks? Not what we'll get into later, but for the next race was the Auto Club, right?
Right. The drivers that I'm looking at.
Who's like the favorites right now, in your opinion?
Well, last year, Kyle Larson won the race. He didn't dominate the race. Tyler Reddick dominated the race. And then late in the race, he got a flat tire. He actually ran into that issue several times last year. But that was the first time that Tyler Reddick, I think, showed that he was going to be someone to compete against every week. He dominated the race, led 90 laps out of like 200, and then blew a tire late in the race, and because of that, he lost. Kyle Larson came through, won the race. He was very fast. He deserved it. I think those are the two that you're looking at is they're going to be competitors, and they're going to be the ones that are going to probably come out strong right off the bat. I'm very curious to see, maybe a little bit of bias here. I'm curious to see Ross Chastain. I think he came out of nowhere last year, and he did bad in this race last year. But I think he is one driver that needs to prove something. Mm-hmm. So I think if they're putting everything into their cars, I think these first few races of the year to continue what they had left off with last year, to show that they're going to be a top team, Trackhouse, and that I think Ross will be someone to watch out for. Hopefully he doesn't spin someone out to do it. But I wouldn't be surprised, unfortunately, as long as it's not Denny Hamlin, because I don't want to hear that too much more. But I think those are the three drivers that I would personally look at. What are you thinking right now?
So I've never seen this track before, but from what I've seen, just from the few races that I've seen so far, Chastain has definitely impressed me. And just from even this race where he came through, won stage 2, got his stage points. Martinsville, obviously, with the never done before, never will be done before, or ever again move.
Yeah.
He does seem like a very impressive driver, and it might be bias coming off of you.
Right.
But I like him. I did really like the looks of Reddick in this race as well before he got knocked out, and I also, from mainly the playoffs last year, I really like. I think one of my favorites is Christopher Bell right now.
That's a good pick. Yeah, Bell's definitely one of those up and coming drivers. I always forget about him, but.
The way that he stayed into the playoffs last year was super impressive to me. It was every time he went out, it was life or death.
Yeah.
And he was the one who won that race just to keep being in the playoffs, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. No, I think you're right. I mean, I'm curious now that it's not life or death for him. He doesn't have to win. Well, I mean, every week you have to win, but he doesn't have to win to get to that next round. I mean, he could, realistically, Christopher Bell, I would be shocked if he missed the playoffs. Right. So it's he doesn't have that do or die attitude now every week. I'm curious if he'll keep that going. I think that's a great person to watch for, though.
That's what I'm saying with these few names that did pretty good in last week. Like, just from names from the playoffs of last year, Logano, obviously, with the championship last year, Bell, Blaney is another. He seems like a fairly consistent driver from what I've seen, at least.
Yep.
And then Chastain, he's a wild card. But he seems like he consistently, even on a bad race, he'll still be decent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think last year he had, I can't remember the exact amount, but I know he had the most top tens out of any driver last year. And I say that his first 2 races last year, Ross Chastain, he finished last place in the Daytona 500, got 1 point. And then at Auto Club, he finished in the 30s, I believe, again. So he started off with 2 rough races and still ended up being the most consistent driver and finishing in the top 10 the rest of the year. He either wrecked or he finished top 10 basically every race. So it's...
Should be interesting, yeah. So one thing that me and Tyler are going to be doing this season are going to be having picking a driver each week to where we battle head-to-head in our own fantasy league. So this is something that we can keep up to date, and you guys can watch with us as we go episode to episode. It was an interesting battle between our 2 drivers for Daytona. I picked Ty Gibbs. Just based off of the name, you know.
Yeah.
And then
I picked Michael McDowell. And I do want to clarify these picks. We're not allowed to pick the same driver twice.
Yes.
Which is why we picked.
Let's go over the rules real quick before we get too deeply into it. So the rules follows. There's no resets through the whole season. We can only pick a driver once per the entire season. Tyler being a little bit more of an expert, can't look at betting odds or any type of charting, which I'm going to try and use that to help me out a little bit. So, and at the end of the season, we'll tally up. It's just 1 point per win. Whoever gets ahead of the other driver's, other person's pick, and we'll just see who gets the most wins. So. With that being said, we didn't want to go with our best picks, the top dogs first off. And I've heard of the name of Ty Gibbs a little bit towards the end of last season. And, if anyone could pull it out in a chaotic race like this, why not a rookie, right?
Yeah, no, I think that was a great pick. I picked someone that I thought was tested and always going to finish up front, Michael McDowell. I mean, he won the Daytona 500 2 years ago.
Right.
He consistently is up front, and then he let me down. But
I mean, he
tried his best.
He was going to beat Ty Gibbs, and if that wreck didn't happen, that was pretty tough. Yeah.
But that's you made a good pick, just knowing that it was going to be chaotic. And Ty Gibbs, I mean, he just played a clean race. He didn't do anything crazy, aggressive like Ty Gibbs typically does. Mm-hmm. He played it very safe, calm, cool, collected as you can be at a plate race. So I think you obviously deserve that point. I'll concede.
I'll take it.
My great pick.
And I'll let you pick the first pick for Auto Club. What are you going with?
So, it could be a waste of a pick this early on, but knowing that I had lost this first race, I felt like I needed to come in and hopefully assert my dominance for the rest of the season. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a big gun. I'm going to go with Kyle Larson. I think
it's not bad. Last year's winner, right?
He won it last year. I think he's got a little chip on his shoulder by not doing as well last year as he did the year before that, where he won almost 10 races, maybe 10 races.
Even this race, he did. He was up there. Yeah.
I think he's got a lot to prove to himself that he's gonna come out here and be this top dog, and I think next week is the week to do it. So that I'm very confident in my pick.
Okay.
Who'd you end up?
This is the 2 Tyler pit stop. I went with Ty Gibbs first week. We got to go with our boy Tyler Reddick this week.
Sticking with the Tylers.
It hasn't failed me yet. So even if neither one of our drivers wins, it only matters who comes out ahead of the other driver for us at least. Yeah, any final thoughts? Anything else to add?
I think Tyler Reddick's a great pick, man. I think that's going to be a tough one. I don't know if I feel as confident as I felt with my pick as in the moment you said Tyler Reddick. But I think it's going to come down to who can have the best full race. I mean, like I said, Reddick last year at this track, he dominated, but was unable to keep all four tires filled there. They had a lot of issues with tires last year with him. There's a lot of technical stuff and why they were really aggressive with all their tire pressures, and it bit him in the butt a few times. So, if he can definitely keep everything together and, put together a full race, I think you made a great pick there.
Yeah, I think this race we're definitely overall just going a lot bigger than we did for the Daytona. So I'm excited to see how this race turns out. I think both of our guys could easily get in the top 5 of Auto Club.
Agreed.
But yeah, with that being said, this has been the first episode of the Two Tyler Pit Stop. Sorry for the breaking set. That's it just kind of falling apart. And if you have any suggestions, any comments, definitely let us know. Thank you for watching.
All right, so then I'll just start from the front as well.
Yeah.
All right. Damn it.
It's hard. Yeah.
Okay. So do I have to say my name's Tyler?
My name's Tyler too. Did I even say my name's Tyler?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. That wasn't too bad.
That was pretty good. None of it recorded because the monitors turned off. Dude, that used to happen.